Hi there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. Welcome to our Saturday live question and answer class. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time, and I'll answer them for you. I take questions about American accent, English pronunciation, so you can talk about words you might find challenging, patterns you're working on, anything to help you improve your fluency and speaking and pronunciation in English. At the start of class today, I'd like to talk a little bit about the pronunciation of past tense verbs. This is something that we've looked at before, and I do have some videos covering it, but it's an area where it affects a lot of people because the way we pronounce these verbs, if you're not using them fluently and easily, it can sound like you're making a grammar mistake when really it may just be a pronunciation-based issue. So, for regular past tense verbs, as you know, we add the letters ed to make something past tense. But we don't always pronounce the letters ed in the same way. And there's a pattern and a rule for how we pronounce them. So for once, it's not random. It's something that you can learn, practice, and internalize. When the word ends with a voiceless sound, like a voiceless consonant, so a p, a t, a k, or a f sound, like stop or talk, then the letters ed are going to say the t sound. So not stopped, but stopped. And you may be pronouncing these correctly already, but hadn't realized this pattern. And it can be very helpful because if you're noticing an issue of not always using the past tense correctly or properly, it can really help. So if I think of stopped as being written with a p and a t, I stopped going, I stopped eating that, she stopped her class, then you can really notice that we don't have the d sound. And if you were trying to make a d sound on there, it's difficult. Because our voice is off when we say stop, there's no vibration here, no voicing or talk, we just continue to have the voice off and use a t sound, which is also voiceless. So same thing with talked. The letters ed say the t sound. I stopped, I talked. There is a little bit of a trick when it comes to linking these sounds that then they do follow the rules of how we pronounce t at the ends of words. So if I'm saying I stopped going, I might, if I want to be really clear that I'm making it past tense, I have to let that t out. I stopped going. It breaks the flow a little bit. If I'm speaking fluently and the context will tell you whether or not it's a past tense, I might swallow that t slightly. I stopped going. There you can hear the t gets a little bit, we don't really hear it, versus in stopped, if I say pt, you can hear the release of that t. So sometimes it could be an unreleased t in a certain context. And then that might be the case where you have to, if you want to be very clear between I stop going at 6, I stopped going last week, you might have to intentionally put that on a little bit more strongly. Also, when we link a t to a vowel, if I say I stopped in last week, then it's going to go back to more of sounding like a D because we use a flap. So just like I say, I got it, the T becomes a flapped T and it sounds more like a D, got it. Same thing happened with stopped in. And that's actually a good way to practice past tense, is to link to vowels and to hear that you're using those flap sounds as you link. But don't be confused if I just say I stopped, you're going to hear that p and t sounds, that consonant cluster. This is less common. You can see there's only 4 sounds when the words end with these 4 sounds that we do the t sound. Actually, that's not true. We also do it for ch and sh sounds. So I watched, I washed. So these voiceless sounds. When the word ends with a consonant sound, a vowel sound or a voiced consonant sound, so that is all of the rest of the consonants and all of the vowel sounds, it will just say the d sound. So that is the most frequent, that ed says just d. And where we run into trouble here is if when we have a consonant sound and we have to do two consonants in a row, it can be challenging to say moved, moved, to keep that voice on, to go through that voiced sound into the D. It's easier in words like played, where we have a vowel sound. And so there it's just kind of natural, played, played, just add the D. Just be careful that, again, you can practice saying he played it, and putting that D on the next, as it connects to the next vowel. I played it yesterday. Usually it's easier to say your past tense D sounds that way. Same thing with he moved it, moved it. That's a strategy that I can then more easily make sure that I don't lose my V or my D sound. He moved it last week. That's a great way to practice getting these D sounds that are clusters. So lastly, there are two cases when we actually say id, the I and D sound for that past tense. And that's when the verb ends with the T or D sounds. So need, I can't just go right to another D or a T sound after a D, need. I have to add the sound needed, needed. So you can think of it as kind of being like needed, the word, like the word did, I did, or wanted. Now I've written wanted here as wanted because when there's an NT in the middle of a word, oftentimes you'll hear native speakers drop that T. So they might say, I wanted it. It's okay to say I wanted it. We do a mix of both. But if you're noticing that you're saying wanted and it sounds a little bit less fluent or natural, that's probably because people around you are using wanted without the T. And again, here's where practicing with a vowel, I needed it, did it, I needed it, I wanted it. That can help you link and add those extra syllables. So I saw a viewer had a question about in needed, if we can use a schwa here, needed. I'd say we probably are a little bit higher than a schwa, but the most important thing is that this is a reduced vowel. So I don't want needed with a clear vowel or needed. It's short and reduced, needed, did. So because it's between two Ds, I'd say it's pretty high in front, and it's more likely to be an id rather than an ud, needed. But that distinction doesn't matter too much as long as it's a reduced vowel. So yes, thinking about that as a schwa or an I is probably okay. So a lot of information here. You can get more help for details and lots of practice materials for past tense in my videos about past tense and in our American Accent 6-week course. I walk you through the most common verbs. I sort them for you by which sounds they make, and I give you lots of tips and tricks for practicing getting these past tense verbs more fluent in your speech. Also, just becoming more aware of where we use them. Sometimes it's about the pronunciation of them, and sometimes it's about, for some people with different language backgrounds, noticing those past tense verbs and where to use them can be challenging. So that's an important part of practicing as well. For that, I would suggest thinking about an event in the past and just recalling or talking about earlier in the day or yesterday. So you can practice going through the common everyday verbs you might use when talking about something that occurred in the past. Okay, welcome everyone. It's nice to see so many of you here. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat at any time. I'd be happy to cover those for you. And you can ask about this topic, but you can also ask about pronunciation, fluent speaking, accent, anything that would be useful for you. So we have a question about the contracted form of there. So looking at, we don't typically write it as a contraction. We'll write it as there are, but we will say it more as there. And the way I would think of this and write it is I would rewrite there, first of all, with the air sound. And then when we have the RE, in the case of there, we just take the R and make it more of an So there, That's not easy because we have to do 2 R's in a row. There. And this R links between the two, so we kind of have error. It's actually very similar to the word error with a TH on the beginning. Also might not help because error is difficult to say. So just think about, as I'm linking between these R's, error, there, that I come into the R and back out of it, there. There are some people I need to talk to. There are some things to do. There are a lot of people there. You'll hear that this R gets a little bit muted sometimes, and it almost just sounds like in fast speech that we're just saying there. There are a lot of people there. There, because the error is very fast. It's the unstressed part of that phrase. But we do want to have a syllable there. I don't want to just say there are a lot of people there. You can hear, though, that actually that's kind of what happens a little bit, that I'm not going slow enough to really hear there, a strong there. It's very fast. Yeah, that's a great question and a difficult combination to make. So just be patient, take it slow, and then see if you can speed up and become more fluent as you're using that combination and that contracted form. Thank you for that question. Okay, we have a question about the word always and whether or not we use the L sound at the beginning. I personally use an L, always, but it is similar to the word all at the beginning, where sometimes people will use a dark L here where they're not fully lifting. So they might not be doing always and lifting the tongue. They might say always, where as I'm coloring that vowel and moving to make the ways with my lips, I don't always have to fully lift the tongue there. It's just whether or not you can get this sound of all without lifting the tongue. And if it's difficult for you to make that dark L with the front of the tongue down, unlike if I'm saying something like I'm all in, then I can link and go to a light L, and my L definitely needs to be strong there. If I'm saying always, as long as I have the sound of this sound of all, which is basically an ah and then a bit of an or a schwa sound, and an L. So the dark L is kind of a schwa and L, or an and an L, all. As long as I have this component of it, always. I can't just go right from ah. I can't do always. That doesn't sound correct, right? Always sounds weird. Always. If I have this kind of coloring of the vowel that I would have with an L, and if I were saying all and finishing my L, then that works for always. I hope that helps you. It's not totally easy to hear and understand, but you just want to think about, if you think the L, even if you don't finish and execute on it, you're going to get the correct sounds here, versus if you just think of it as this vowel ah, it's not going to sound correct in always. Okay, so yeah, definitely good question. Gets into those details of the different ways we can make L at the ends or in the middle when it's a dark L. Okay, I hope that helped you pronounce the word. Thank you for that question and that suggestion. Do feel free to put your additional questions and comments there in the comments, and I can cover your words. I want to look at a few recent requests, and then I'll turn to additional questions if there are some. So we had a request for the word disappointed. So in the word disappointed, we stress on the point syllable. And I can either say disappointed with a T, like with wanted, or disappointed. Sometimes people will drop that T. I'll show you both ways. So we have disappointed. So first vowel is an I sound, like dis, Letter A is unstressed, reduced vowel. It sounds like and then the OI is the oi, like in boy. So I'll write it that way. Poi, and we have the N, poin, and then either tid, disappointed, or disappointed, pointed, where we can just go right to the I sound. I was very disappointed. I hope you won't be disappointed. You'll hear both, native speakers use both, but be aware that T may drop in disappointed or in wanted. Okay, great. We have a question about adjusted it and tested it. So very good. So adjusted, again, we have just like disappointed or wanted, we have the TED. This is an example of in adjusted, we don't really say that D. So like the L in always, because we're stressing on the J syllable. This is the letter A is going to be the an unstressed schwa sound. And this symbol is not a D and a J. It's the symbol for the J sound that we spell with J. So adjusted it. All right, so it'll sound like adjusted it. Adjusted it. We don't really need two D's here, but just to help you recognize the did, I guess I'll write that as an I sound. Adjusted it. Adjusted it. So I'd like to adjust. We adjusted it. Adjusted it. Adjusted. I missed a syllable here. Yeah. So I do like writing it as did. Adjusted it. Just because I think when you see did it, that can help you. Adjusted it. Adjusted it. This T here is not exactly a flap. It's just an unreleased, unaspirated T because it's part of the ST blend. Just did. But I think that's a good way to visualize that combination. I adjusted it. And same thing with tested it. It's going to have the same kind of patterning. So for tested it, I would think of it as, except for it has first syllable stress now, tested it. All linked together though, so tested it. Unlike if I were saying someone named Tess, I would say Tess did it. Tess did it. I would stress on the did, but tested it. She tested it. I'm stressing on the Tess. Thank you. Yeah, definitely challenging combinations when we have those TEDs followed by the word it. It's a great way to practice on past tense. Okay, we have a question about the word apoptosis. I'm going to have to look that one up because I actually don't know how to pronounce it. So a couple of different guesses. I would say probably apoptosis is one possibility if it's stressed on pop, or apoptosis if it's stressed on the toe. Often these types of words are stressed on the second to last syllable, but there's a couple of different ways this could happen. So let's look it up, and I have my handy dictionary. I do often use Merriam-Webster or Oxford Learner's Dictionary online because then you can listen to the word, but for this setting, having the dictionary here in paper can be helpful. So I'm looking for the APOP section. So we have apoplectic, apoplexy. So your word is spelled with APOPT. APOPT. Thanks for your patience while I look it up. Okay, well, it's not in my paper dictionary. I'll have to get back to you. I'll look it up online. Usually Merriam-Webster has medical words. So it's either likely going to be apoptosis, with this being a schwa and this being an ah, or if it's got second to last syllable stress, this will be an a instead of an and it would be apoptosis with the syllabling stressed. So just my knowledge of how vowels change depending on the stress patterns. There's two possibilities for this. There's more than two, but the most likely are those two. There is also a possibility that you would say the A for the A, because sometimes in medical terminology we have that for the A meaning not or no. Okay, but I'll get back to you with a response on that one. Don't know it off the top of my head and not in my paper dictionary, so I'll have to check some other resources for you. Thank you for that question, and I'll be learning something later today as well when I look it up. Okay, we have a question about when we have STS at the ends of words. So I did just recently create a long video just about this topic. It's in my podcast playlist, and it has a ton of word examples and practice. So my new podcast lessons are available as audio lessons on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, etc. Also here on the channel, there's a podcast playlist where sometimes there will be visuals to accompany it. And what I walk you through there is how to build up the STS. So for example, if I'm saying something like lists or tests, I usually suggest building from the beginning of the word and then adding the additional consonants. So I would say, for example, lists, list, and finally lists. So you're making a sound that continues. You're stopping the air briefly and then going back to that S sound. So you won't hear the t releasing because it's releasing into the S. When I say list, you can hear the t. When I say lists, I'm just stopping my S, closing off the air, and then going back to the S. So it's almost like s with a stop and then another s sound. At any rate, you're in luck that I just recently made a long video about this topic with a lot of details. So after class, I will put a link to that video here in the comments for this video, or you can leave me a comment on this video or any videos and I'll send you that link. Or just go to our channel page, look at the playlists, and go for the podcast playlist. You can also, if you're looking for something on the channel, of course, you can always leave me a comment. I'm happy to send you a link to where you can find the answers and where I have videos for your topic. But you can also, on the channel, if you scroll over, there's a search box right on the channel. So across the top, you have a menu that says like home and videos, your different channel options. On the far right, you'll see a little magnifying or glass or search box. Type in your word or your phrase or your question, and videos I have that relate to that question will pop up for you. So you may find more than one video talking about that topic or words with your pronunciation pattern to get you help. Of course, I'm happy to do that for you as well. So as I said, with any questions, if I don't get to your question today, or when you're watching one of my videos, if you have a question, always leave me a comment and I can direct you to resources. Thank you for that question. Welcome everyone who's just joining us. We have a question about Indian English speakers and how to change over to more of an American accent. So I do have a playlist here on the channel that talks about some of the patterns for Indian English speakers, and I also have an online course on my website, speechmodification.com, that's specifically designed for Indian English speakers who want to transition more to the American patterns. One of the things to look for is just that Indian English is more typically has more of the British pronunciations. So you can see my playlist for British pronunciations. But then also, of course, the English spoken in India varies, and everyone's individual accent will vary depending on what other languages you speak and what sound system that you learned when you learned your first language. Most of the typical patterns for Indian English speakers have to do with how they're saying the R sounds, TH sounds, Sometimes vowels, although Hindi speakers typically don't have too many issues with vowels, except for using more British pronunciation of vowels rather than American vowels. So first of all, just learning what accent patterns you have, which you can do with free resources on my website, speechmodification.com. I have some downloads for different language backgrounds where you can see. So for example, in Indian English, you'll be able to download a chart that'll show you that you may have a tendency, for example, for words that end with voiced consonants like b, d, and g, that you might have a tendency to say them more with the voiceless consonants. So if you're saying big, it might sound a little more like bic. Or if you're saying web, it might sound a little more like wep. And then in my courses and in my videos, you can use this knowledge to look at videos that talk about those patterns and those sounds. Becoming aware of the patterns is the first step, and then learning about how to practice and change speech patterns. There are some kind of quick fixes you can do. For example, paying attention to the T sound in the middle of words and at the ends of words. That's an important pattern where Indian English speakers might say water or got it, and American speakers would say water and got it. We would use flaps there. So there's a lot of different details, but I think becoming more aware of what the patterns are and then learning how to practice and change your speech. Those are all things that you can do with resources here on the channel, as well as on our website, checking out our online courses. Those would be very helpful for you, I would think. So thank you for that question. That's basically what our whole channel is about. Of course, people from all different backgrounds are working on pronunciation and American accent, fluency in English, and so we have lots of different resources for that. Welcome if you're new. It's nice to have you here today. Okay, we have a question about words like makes, straights, wolves, and holds. So similar to as we were talking about past tense, when we add letters ed, they can say different things. When we're talking about verbs that add s or plurals that add s, the s can also say different things. So thank you for bringing up this topic. I have some videos and resources on this topic that I can direct you to as well, both in our members playlist and in our regular playlist. So because you're a channel member, I'll direct you to both resources. But let's look at your specific words and examples, because you have a nice array of words here for plurals and for these types of verbs. So letter S will say the S sound, like S, in the word makes, because make ends with a voiceless K sound. So you remember how we had our P, T, K, and S sounds for past tense? Same thing here, that the E is silent and it just sounds like makes. So again, what I would suggest is try practicing without the S, like I make, he makes, so that you can hear that contrast of when you just have K versus when you have X for that verb form. And then also just using he, she, and it can help you know when to use this form. So for example, he makes, it makes, she makes, and also nouns. So the cat makes, the car makes, Toyota makes. That will help you remember to use that. In terms of pronunciation, it's straightforward. It's just the S sound. Same thing with straights. Because the T is voiceless, we're going to also have the S sound. This is kind of a strange spelling. It's the same as this word, like something is straight or straights. I'm in dire straits, straight being like a body of water and straight being the line. And then for wolves, this is where for a V or a D sound, the letter S is going to say the Z sound, the Z sound, because these are voiced. So very frequently, if we have a voiced consonant or a vowel sound, so for example, if I had like pays, this vowel sound, then that's going to be a Z sound. So pays. For wolves, very similar to moves, where I have to do the V and the Z sound together, wolves. Or holds, again, the D and the Z sound together, holds. For these, again, adding it to a vowel, adding it to a word that starts with a vowel can be very helpful, like holds it, he holds it in his hand. Or wolves are in the forest, wolves are. It's easier to say that voiced sound as I'm connecting to another word, so that's a good strategy. Pays it, he pays it every month. Same thing here, if I'm having trouble doing that consonant cluster, makes or straights, I can say she makes it makes it, etc. And my S sound will link to the next word. So for help with this, I have some videos and lessons about plurals specifically, and also about third-person verb tenses. Those are the 2 times, as well as possessives. That's another place where we do it. So if I say, for example, Mark's car, it would just be like makes, or Steve's car would be like wolves. So same thing with the possessive S. It can be a S or a Z sound. Great topic, thank you. That is definitely something that I've talked about before on the channel, and we have a lot of resources for it. So if you need a little bit more in-depth help, let me know and I'll direct you to those resources. And thanks so much for being a channel member. I appreciate your support. Okay, great. We have a question. Letter T in lists is not pronounced. So you don't hear the T like lists. But as I said, you will stop the air. If I just dropped it, then lists would just sound like lists, which is not correct. Not lists, but lists, lists. So the T does stop the air, even though we don't hear a T sound. We hear a break between our 2 S sounds. Yes, good point. Thank you. Okay. We have a question about raising the soft palate when speaking English. I think that's something that people can't really consciously do. We don't feel that conscious control of the soft palate is the top of the mouth behind, kind of near the back of the throat. So the palate is the roof of your mouth, and part of it is hard. You can feel it with your tongue. There's bone or cartilage there, I think, and then in the back, in the far back, it's the soft palate. It's just muscle and skin or flesh. I think it's more important when you're thinking about having a tone or a sound of American English, to have more of the central tongue position. So I often counsel my clients about thinking of this schwa, the sound, as the resting place for their tongue, because it's our most common sound in English, and a lot of our accent patterns and reductions come from kind of having that position, which we know because when Americans are using filler sounds, they'll say or that tells you where their tongue is when they're not speaking. Their voice is on, but they're not articulating, they're not moving their tongue or their lips to make any specific sound. It comes out sounding like That tells you that the tongue is resting in the same position it is when it needs to say this vowel schwa, this sound. And that's where you want to have your tongue positioned for all of the other things that you're saying. That should be kind of your home base in English. If that corresponds to raising the soft palate to have that sound then great, but I don't know that we can really feel and consciously do that. People are describing the phenomenon of what's happening when you're speaking that way, but it's not really under your conscious control. So thinking more about the being your home base, because in longer words, if I'm saying just a banana, my schwa is here, 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 and here. Just a banana. The only clear vowel I'm using is the here. Otherwise, so much of my speech is that sound. Same thing, even if I'm saying, for example, I need to get a, passport. I don't use a clear vowel here. I don't say I need to get a passport. These become schwas. I need to get a passport. And these types of reductions happen because I'm staying in that home base of the sound, and I'm trying to have minimal amount of effort for the tongue movement as I connect and link between sounds. So that would be my advice for, if you're thinking about what's kind of one general thing I can do to have more of an American accent, focusing in on the relaxed schwa sound, using that for your reductions, for your linking, and in longer words, making sure that you're not over-pronouncing vowel sounds, but that you're kind of having that placement. I do have some lessons about that, and that's something that we talk about in our online courses as well as in some of the videos here, but I hope that kind of helps you think about generally American accent and placement, more so than looking at the soft palate. Thanks for bringing up that topic. That's a good question. Okay, we have a question about the word written. So written is an example of where we use an unreleased T and a syllabic N. So the W is silent. WR just says the R sound, ri. Vowel I says the I sound. In the dictionary, you might see it written with a schwa, or you might see it written without the schwa, with just the T and the N. They don't really usually show you that it's an unreleased T. That's just something that you have to learn to listen to the differences. Versus if I'm saying something like water, I'm going to hear a flap there. It's going to sound more like a D, water. In written, I go up to make that T, written, and then I don't let the T out. There's no burst of air, not written with a T, but written. And then I don't really say the schwa here. I just go directly to the N sound. It functions like a syllable. The letter N is syllabic N, meaning it's both the consonant and the vowel sound, the full syllable, written. That's one of the ways. People do sometimes say written, but that's more typical British English. It sounds a little bit more disconnected versus in American English. It was written by the author. It was written for her specifically. Written, we use that combination. Similar words, we also do that with TTON or TON, so like button, written, cotton, gotten, etc. Thank you. That's a good question, and I do have some videos talking about that combination of sounds as well. And you can learn about all of the sounds of English and all of those details of the different ways we say T in the middle of ends and ends of words, or all of the different sounds that we've talked about today in our Sounds of English course on speechmodification.com. It's a great way to get a strong foundation to understand all of the sounds, spelling, accent error patterns you may want to watch out for, to just feel confident pronouncing any word you want in English because you understand the sounds and the patterns. So check that out on our website. It's called The Sounds of English, and it's on speechmodification.com. Okay, we have a question about with think and thank. So for think versus thank, let's look at the vowel placement. So we have the I is high and in the front, and the A of thank is more open and in the front. But they also have the tongue lifting in the back for the NG sound and the K sound. So in think, you're going to have it with the th sound, the I sound, the NG ng sound, and the k sound, think. And thank, you're going to have the same pattern but with the A sound. When we have the combination of A and NG, ang, it's going to sound a little less open than if I'm saying like hat or that, where I can just stay more open for the A. because it gets a little bit nasalized. The back of the tongue is lifting for the NG. So the ang and ing won't sound exactly the same as just the I and the ah, but those can still help you. So for example, try pairing with another word like it thinks. It thinks. You want to feel similarity of the I sound, even though this one will be a little bit higher and more nasal because it's followed by the NG. Or that thanks or at thank. Matching that ah sound can help you. Just when you're trying to just do these two sounds, think, thank, you should just feel your jaws a little bit more open and the front of your tongue is further down for the ah than it is for the I. You can also just try doing ing, ang. So if you're just thinking about ing, ang, making that difference, that's what happens in the middle of those two words that's different from each other. It's definitely challenging, and I believe I have a video talking about these particular words, as well as many videos talking about I and ing and ah and ang as well. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, we have a question about in the phrase need to, can we drop the D and keep the T? Need to. So as I say need to, we do drop the D in that we don't say need to. There's not a break in between, but we mark this D. So I can't just drop it entirely, or it would sound like need to, need to. What I need to do is stop here, need to. So it's an unreleased D, and then I release it onto the T sound. I need to go. So there should be a little bit of a break. Not this. There should be a little bit of a break, marking that D and then releasing into the T. You can see my video for how we use unreleased stop consonants on the channel or also in our Sounds of English course. We do the same thing for the T sounds, the B, the G, the K, the P, and the D. All of these stop consonants. When the next word starts with a consonant sound, we use an unreleased stop, and then we release into the next consonant sound. Yeah, great question. Thank you. Okay, we'll take a few more and then I need to wrap up for today. Actually, we'll just take one more because it's approaching 10 a.m. here in Seattle, and it's been a nice long class with so many great questions. Thanks so much for being part of class and for asking these wonderful questions. I know they help not only you, but other people who are watching. Just a quick, I won't write it out, but to answer your questions quickly, capital and capital do sound the same, like capital like money and capital like the capital of a state or the Capitol building. I do have a video about that you can check out to learn more about those pronunciations. And Columbia, the country, and Columbia University also sound the same. So thank you for that question. And how to pronounce out in connected speech. So if I'm linking to a vowel, out will sound like out of. So out of. Out in, this will be a flap. Otherwise, out there, if you're out there, unreleased T, just like we had in need to. He's out there. So this AU is the ow, like in brown cow. I would write it this way, like cow and how, but that can be confused with O, like snow. So I kind of like writing it with the AU, ow, out of, out there. Okay, great. So wonderful to see so many of you here, including some of our channel members. Thanks so much for being channel members and subscribers. Your support is very much appreciated. It does really help the channel to grow. If you're watching this later on, feel free to leave your question in a comment, or if you have a question for me, come back next week and we'll have another live class. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow in tomorrow's special Sunday class. Monday, we'll have our mini Monday. Wednesday, our Word Wednesday, and Friday, our Fluency Friday. So keep coming back to the channel to check out our new videos, lots of new videos coming up. And I'm very excited about our podcasts and our online courses to give you even more help on the go and outside of the channel. Thanks for being a part of the class today. I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. speechmodification.com. Bye, everyone. Thanks for being here.